The air was thick with tension at the United Nations Global Security Summit in Geneva. Journalists whispered behind cameras, diplomats shuffled into their seats, and gold nameplates glinted under the lights. Then came the moment that changed everything. A chair was reserved right up front for Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso. Next to it, Donald J. Trump. Or at least it was supposed to be. Trump paused, stared at the name beside his. Then, with a small gesture, he motioned to his aide. Within seconds, an assistant hurried in, snatched up Trump's nameplate, and moved it to a chair across the room. You could hear the gasp ripple through the room. The cameras caught everything. But Traoré, he didn't flinch. He simply walked to his seat and sat down, calm, composed, eyes locked on the man across the hall. The moderator hadn't even opened the summit yet, but Captain Traoré leaned into the mic and spoke. "I didn't come here to make enemies. I came to tell the truth." The entire hall fell silent. Reporters from CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera went live on the spot. "If a man refuses to sit beside you," Traoré said slowly, "ask yourself, what truth is he afraid of?" Trump didn't answer. He just looked away. Traoré, wasn't he done? "My people don't eat speeches. They eat rice. They need clean water. They need peace. I'm not here for politics. I'm here for life." You could feel something had cracked wide open in that room. Delegates from Mali, Niger, even parts of Europe quietly nodded. Some wiped away tears. This wasn't diplomacy. It was a reckoning. Then something happened that wasn't on any agenda. A woman from the EU delegation stood up. She didn't wait for the mic. Her voice trembled. "I've been in rooms like this for 30 years, she said. "I've never heard someone speak like that. Not with anger, not with fear, but with truth." She pointed at Captain Traoré. You remind me of Lumumba, of Sankara. You speak for Africa. But somehow, you're speaking for all of us." Traoré didn't react. It's just a small nod of respect. Trump sat stiffly across the room, arms folded, jaw tight. The moderator finally cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" But it didn't matter. The summit had already changed. Outside the glass walls, a crowd had gathered. Word had spread like wildfire. Students from France, doctors from Ghana, veterans from the US, even exiled journalists holding up handmade signs. "Dignity for Africa. Stand with Traoré. Let truth speak." One woman held a photo of her. Son killed in a drone strike years ago. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "He just wanted a school," she whispered. "Not a war." Inside, Traoré sat quietly. He didn't need applause. He had seen the real world where kids drink dirty water and mothers break one yam into 3. Trump sat across from him, expression frozen. But the world was watching now, and the silence between them. It spoke louder than any speech. This wasn't just a moment. It was a shift, not in policy, in power. And it all began because one man refused to move, another refused to be moved. Stand with Tro, Ardzine Hall, let truth speak, #Unsummit 225 for years. Voices from smaller nations barely made it past the hallways of global summits. They were present, but not heard. That changed the moment. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso took his seat in Geneva. Inside, the tension was already thick. But after Traoré spoke truthfully, calmly, fearlessly, something began to shift, not just in the room, but around the world. And then something no one expected happened. Not a president, not a prime minister, but a teenage boy stood up. The moderator looked confused. "You're not on the speaking list." But the boy didn't budge. "I don't need a list," he said, voice shaking. Just 5 seconds. The room turned, cameras focused in. You could hear his heartbeat in the silence. "My name is Kofi," he said. "I was born in a refugee camp in Niger. I watched my father die waiting for medicine that never came. He turned to Traoré, but last year I heard about you. A young leader who took back your country's gold and gave it to your people. That gave me hope. That made me want to lead too. Kofi wiped his face. The whole room was silent. Captain Traoré stood slowly. He didn't speak. He just placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder and nodded. That small moment said everything. And then, just as the emotions settled, Trump pushed his microphone forward. A hush swept across the hall. Everyone turned, waiting. Was he finally going to speak? He tapped the mic, adjusted his suit. And then he stood up. Without a word, Trump turned, walked past the cameras, past the aides, and left the summit. Just walked out. Gasps. Stunned silence. Someone whispered, "He's walking away from the conversation." Reporters shouted questions. He didn't stop. Traoré didn't follow. He didn't flinch. He just watched. Calm, grounded. Then he leaned forward and said, "When silence becomes a weapon, we answer with truth, not rage." The room broke into thunderous applause. But inside Traoré, something deeper stirred. He wasn't angry. He was exhausted. Exhausted from being treated. Like a guest in rooms his people had paid for with blood and struggle. Exhausted from watching Africa be sidelined, mocked, ignored while its children died from dirty water, and mothers made one yam feed 3 mouths. And yet, he sat there with dignity, 'cause he knew this moment mattered. He remembered the faces of the people back home, the farmer pushed off his land, the student forced to quit school, the old man watching his family leave with no future in sight. This summit wasn't about headlines anymore. It was about them. And he knew he had to speak for them, not just with facts, but with heart. Then, from the far corner of the room, a new voice broke the stillness. A young Canadian delegate, barely in her late 20s, stood up. "I know I'm not on the schedule," she said, voice full of emotion. "But I need to say this." She looked straight at Captain Traoré. "I come from comfort, from safety. But my grandmother was a war survivor. She taught me that real courage doesn't come from status. It comes from sacrifice. You reminded me of that today." She paused, her voice cracking. "Captain, I believe in your vision. And I stand with you." Traoré's face softened. He gave a gentle nod. No official agenda could have planned. This no script could have captured it. But that day inside that hall, something true happened. Power didn't come from a title or a flag. It came from people who stood up, from voices long ignored, from a captain who refused to sit quietly, from a boy with 5 seconds of courage, from a young woman who listened with her heart. And for the first time in a long time, the world didn't just watch. It listened. For one brief, unforgettable moment, the noise of politics fell away. The titles, the flags, the long histories of power games, all faded into something raw and deeply human. Inside that packed summit hall in Geneva, the final speaker was called Captain Ibrahim Traoré Rose. There was no fanfare, no podium theatrics, just a young man from Burkina Faso standing beneath the world's brightest lights. The room went still, every eye on him, every camera live. He looked out at the faces leaders, skeptics, allies, enemies. He let the silence breathe, then said, "Where I come from, dignity isn't given, it's earned." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. And when someone refuses to sit beside us, he continued, "They're not afraid of who we are. They just refuse to see us as equals." For a second, no one moved. No one even blinked. Then one woman in the front row stood. She clapped. Then another, and another. And soon the entire room was on its feet. Not because they were told to, but because something inside them, stood up too. Traoré didn't smile. He nodded quietly. Then he spoke again, this time with a deeper weight. "I'm not here to ask for approval. I'm here to demand justice." The applause stopped. The room braced itself. What he said next would stay with them forever. If a leader refuses to share space with you, it's not just a matter of seating. It's a refusal to recognize your humanity. He took a breath. His hands gripped the sides of the podium, but his voice remained steady, carrying the pain and pride of millions. Children in Burkina Faso walk miles for a drop of clean water. Mothers bury their dreams beside the graves of their children. We don't just suffer from poverty. We suffer from being forgotten. The room was frozen in place. Even those watching from their living rooms could feel it, a kind of quiet truth that pierced through polished speeches and rehearsed politics. "I'm not angry," he said. "I'm hopeful. Because even when we're ignored, we still rise." And then came the final line. It's the one that shook the room to its core. "We will not be invisible anymore." A tear slipped down his cheek. One camera caught it. That single frame would circle the world in hours. As he stepped away from the mic, the hall buzzed with motion. Delegates whispered. Phones lit up. Clips were already spreading across social media, not because of drama, but because of something that felt real. Hashtags like Zinhal, Stand with Traoré, and hashtag Dignity for Africa lit up the trending lists. Backstage, reporters scrambled for a statement. But Traoré, hands folded, sat quietly. Not triumphant, just steady. A man who had carried the voices of his people into a room built to exclude them. Even Trump, who had walked out earlier, now watched the replay from a distance, its expression unreadable. Regret, resentment, no one could say. But something had shifted, because Traoré Hadanti started a fight. He started a movement, one not built on anger, but on truth. One, not fueled by shouting, but by clarity. It's a revolution of calm defiance. And just when the room thought it had seen the last surprise, the moderator stepped forward with an announcement, a last-minute press conference. Traoré would speak again, this time to the world outside. The plaza outside the summit was packed. Protesters, supporters, cameras, children sitting on their fathers' shoulders, students waving signs. Even a few skeptics, curious now. Traoré stepped up to the mic. The sun caught his uniform just right, not to make him look powerful, but to show who he was. "I didn't come here to divide," he said, "but to unite, to remind every nation, every leader, that real leadership is service, and that no child anywhere should be born into silence." The crowd didn't cheer right away. They listened. And when they clapped, it wasn't for the man on stage. It was for the message in the air. News outlets across the globe covered the moment with disbelief. Headlines read, "Captain from Burkina Faso silences global summit with Grace Traoré's words reshape the agenda dignity." Not politics wins the day, but behind every headline, behind every viral clip, was a deeper truth. Traoré didn't come to be seen. He came to make others visible. The children on the dusty streets of Ouagadougou. The mother with nothing left but hope. The youth in refugee camps searching for meaning. And somehow, he had done it. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with quiet, unstoppable conviction. And the world at last was listening. By the time the summit ended, something strange had happened. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was no longer just a nameplate at a conference table. He had become something more. A symbol, a spark, a reminder that real strength doesn't always look like power. Sometimes it looks like humility, quiet conviction. A man standing tall even when the room tries to shrink him. He didn't deliver a perfect speech. He didn't try to impress. He simply told the truth, and the world listened. Every post, every retweet, every clip that spread online wasn't just about politics. It was about possibility. It's people. Even those far from Burkina Faso began to feel something deeper. A sense that dignity, real dignity, was worth fighting for. And suddenly, this summit wasn't about borders or diplomacy anymore. It was about all of us. Later that night, long after the cameras had shut off and the buzz had died down, Traoré found a quiet corner in the back halls of the summit building. An aide approached young, nervous. "Captain," she whispered, "the world is watching. You've moved millions." but there are some who want to make this moment disappear. He didn't answer right away. He just stared out the window. His voice was low, calm. Then we've done something right, he said, because truth doesn't move through the easy doors. It breaks through the walls. He thought about the cost, the friends he'd buried, the nights he'd laid awake, wondering if it was all worth it. And then he thought of the children back home, barefoot in the red dust, still smiling, still believing. He clenched his fist gently. For them, he whispered, I will never stop speaking. That night, the world turned on its screens. Headlines blazed. Traoré's triumph, when silence spoke louder than power. A captain's calm changes the conversation. Some dismissed it. Some tried to downplay it. But most people felt it. That rare, quiet shift that happens when something real cuts through the noise. In classrooms across Africa and Europe, teachers showed students the clip of Traoré standing alone, unshaken. In coffee shops, strangers nodded to each other and talked not about politicians, but about dignity. In cities and villages from Dakar to Detroit, people gathered. They lit candles, held up signs, not in protest of Traoré, but in solidarity with the truth he spoke. This was no longer a story about two men and a chair. It wasn't about Trump walking out or Traoré refusing to be moved. It was about something bigger, about what happens when someone finally says what others are too afraid to say. We are not invisible, and we will not wait to be seen. This became a story for the mother raising 3 kids on nothing. It's for the boy watching from a refugee tent. It's for the girl who thought no one would ever listen. Because when Traoré stood up that day, he didn't just speak for Burkina Faso. He spoke for every voice that had been silenced. And suddenly, across the globe, people were asking a different question. Not what did Traoré say, but what will we say when it's our turn? That was the real echo of the summit, not a moment of confrontation, but a call to conscience. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand your ground and speak from the soul.